photos. I like writing.
Yeah.
I like films. So I wanted to still see that stuff. So, I started getting into Andrew Kidman
Yeah.
and, Cyrus Sutton and the corduroy stuff. And honestly, the first time I heard of Tom Blake was, I think was a Cyrus Sutton film.
Yeah.
I think wasn't that long ago, I think it was Stoked and Broke, and they had like
Yeah.
a little animated Blake, and he says a quote in the beginning. And I'm like, this is interesting. And then I started finding out about the Timothy Leary stuff, his talk with Pesman, and I just started putting puzzle pieces together, but Tom Blake was a big sort of piece to that puzzle, like what an important figure, take the spirituality even out of it, and what an important figure in surfboard design and just modern surfing period. And so many people don't know who he is. I didn't know who he was either. It's kind of like a lot of this stuff was just not really delivered to us, our generation, growing up with the magazines and stuff back then. It was very like just what was happening, not much historical,
all to sell board
data.
shorts,
Yeah. Kids don't really give a shit either. They want to see, the picture of Fletcher back then, or, whoever it may be now, they want to see Blast in the Air. So I get it. But, as I got older, that was, just reading Tom Blake stuff with the atomic spirituality, the nature of God, the, vegetarianism, in the 1930s, I think?
Yeah, way before, anyway.
Yeah, he was ahead. And to me, Tom Blake represents like a real surfer, a real modern surfer, modern meaning, surfing was a spiritual practice of the ancient Polynesians.
Of course,
it was just a sport or something in that nature. It had a spiritual significance. Modern surfing, to me, Tom Blake is a real important figure, especially for us here, in the West, just, through design, through his philosophical way of looking at surfing and a spiritual perspective and the way he lived. He's like a true surfer to me.
He was, he innovated. He was philosophical about surfing, and I think probably one of the first, modern surfers that was white, probably that thought of surfing as a spiritual practice, and and as a religion almost, and in some ways. But he allowed, the beauty of him is he evolved beyond surfing in a lot of ways. He just kind of moved back, to Minnesota basically after the crowds came, and it just didn't feel the same for him, or wasn't the same experience.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. How you practice mindfulness, and you are seeking something spiritual out of surfing. In today's population boom of surfers, how do you keep that mindset? How do you keep yourself with a open heart in the water sometimes when it can be a little chaotic? Yeah,
I mean,
and how do you keep surfing? Like instead of just moving to Minnesota like Tom Blake, that's the other thing. And instead of giving up on it.
I would always have like a melt. I mean, I would say this summer, I had not one meltdown in the water. Usually every summer I have a meltdown, or it gets crowd, whatever, something stupid. But I mean, for me, part of it is, first of all, I like to find spots that are less crowded.
Yeah.
It's part of where I'm like a migratory surfer, I'm not going to go, like even, where every dude is surfing, like, the photographers aren't, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to go there. Like, I don't want, not like I have anything against, I don't want to be around a million dudes.
Yeah.
you know, and it's, you know, it's just too much for me. I don't have that kind of like energy where I want to be pounding dudes down and dealing with that nonsense. When I was younger, I enjoyed that on some level. So I try to find, you know, I like to find my little uncrowded spot, and I'll surf there. And then when the crowds come, I'll find another one, you know, but I kind of doing that every year right now. I've been surfing the same spot for almost 3 years, and it's still pretty good with the crowd. So I like to keep it uncrowded. You know, second is you know, I have to be mindful because my older nature was to be aggressive and, you know, sort of like a skater punk rock like mentality. So, you know, I have to, you know, be more mindful that, you know, it's not all about you, man. Like, in the sense of like even just catching waves, like there's other people out here, and, you know, so I have to, I mean, now it's easier. I don't have to reel myself back because I think it's aging is part of it, being a parent's part of it, you know, injuries and things. I mean, these things start to come,
yeah,
and they humble you, and they sort of put you in your place. I feel like, and they let you know, like, hey, like what you're doing is a real gift. Don't take it for granted. Like, don't be a dick. You know, like I've been a dick, and I've been on the receiving end of like someone being a jerk or whatever. And either way, it never feels good. If I'm a jerk to somebody in the water, it doesn't feel good after. I don't feel good. I feel bad. If someone's a jerk to me, I don't feel good either. So, you know, let me try to be kind. You know, and it takes me trying, you know, because surfing is sort of like a Darwinian kind of like pursuit. You know, we got to hunt down waves, it's find a resource, this, that, and the other thing. So, you know, a lot of times it really is about, you know, I can let one go, or I can let two go, or I could share one now where, you know, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, that wasn't happening.
yeah.
I wanted every wave. You're going on this one, I'm screaming at you, whatever it may be, stupid. You know, now it's just like, it becomes more playful. You know, I still love it, and I still take it seriously in the sense of I want to surf well for me, you know, which is a relative term. And, you know, surfing is a practice, like we said, a religion. And in that sense, you know, my practice now is in sort of the reduction, you know, taking away a lot of the fat, you know, the extra movement, nonsense, stuff that doesn't serve me anymore, stuff that maybe my body doesn't want to do anymore, and keep it smooth and graceful and sort of simple. That's like where I'm at with it. And I think that's a reflection of what's happening inside me too. So as I progress on the inside and in the way that I live my life, it's reflected in my surfing. So I feel like in my life, I'm learning to let go a little more. It's hard, you know, let go. It's not easy for me, so I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Like that it's easy. It's not easy for me. And
it's hard to break the learned behavior, you know, also that I think many of us who grew up surfing experience, you know, older surfers with a certain attitude or grommet abuse or whatever. And, you know, and then you have to kind of put that out there as well as you get older, and you feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. And there's like almost a cycle with it. And it's hard to break that. And I find myself regressing every once in a while into that aggressive mode, or that selfish, or that insecure, or that egotistical, whatever that is. I feel that sometimes in the water, and it's so funny. Like, and then sometimes someone will call you out on it, and it's great sometimes. And when that happens, you're like, fuck, I'm an asshole, or I'm being a dick.
I had that happen to me like 3 or 4 summers ago. I was, you know, just being greedy, you know, for waves, and maybe I'd burned a couple guys, and someone he called me out on it. And he had read like things I'd written and stuff, and really like, you know, it really was like a hammer to my head. Like I was like, oh damn, you know, and I really felt foolish, like stupid, you know. And but you need that. you know, like you need that, like that dude saying like, hey man, like I know who you are, and you know, you wrote this and wrote that, but you know, whatever, you know, the way you're behaving right now is not reflective of that. And I'm like, shit, like he's right. You know, and I had to go home with my
Tail between your
between
legs.
you know, whatever. And like, he was right, you know, and I'm glad he said something too, because, you know, that even that one moment of that dude telling me like, hey man, you're being a dick and I know who you are, and not, you know, a great reflection of like the stuff that you express. And I actually dig that stuff. And I had to kind of sit with that and be like, fuck, all right, let's kind of try to work through that, you know, like not like be fake. Like I'm not into being fake, you know, like, or anything of that nature, or be like a fake saint or something like that. I'm not trying to be that or anything, but you know, yeah, like, okay, you're writing this stuff, you're expressing this stuff, you're trying to live it, but like live it a little more. People are paying attention.
We're striving.
Yeah, I'm
inspirational.
You know, that's what I always try to say. Like, look, if I say something or I write something or I do something, don't think that I'm telling you I got it figured out, because I don't have it figured out. I'm a student. That's why I'm still here. Still a student, and I'm aspiring. I'm aspirational, and it, you know, that's important also to say, because things get confused. You know, you write a thing, you say a thing, and then people think that you think you're an authority, and it's like, no, maybe an authority on my own experience, but that's about it. You know, even then, you know, how much of my ego and my mind is getting in on it and, you know, adding its own, you know, flavor or whatever, you know. So
it's funny. It is interesting. Like, you know, that's what I love about surfing though. And sometimes it can come from the nature humbling you, and sometimes it could be the other surfers that humble you, you know? Now let's talk Surf and Abide here real quick. Can you give our listeners like a brief overview of what Surf and Abide is and what you're doing with it?
Yeah. So Surf and Abide was originally started by a friend of mine in San Francisco in 2014, I think. He launched the site. So I was originally brought on as a freelance to create content. Yeah. And just be a liaison, you know, between people and things. So that was going for about 2 years. And then Christian, my friend who had started it and had brought me on, he was having some health issues, which are now resolved. He's all good. But, you know, it sort of took a back burner type of thing. A lot of, you know, the funding was pulled and this and that. So I just sort of took it over in the sense of, I'm just going to continue to create content, you know, if I want, you know, because, you know, the site has a readership or, you know, a following, and it looks good. And, you know, I want to continue to do this, even if I'm not making money doing it, was sort of my attitude. And I did do that. You know, I continued to write. I continued to make short films, you know, and do things. You know, I don't maintain the site like I used to, but there's always, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there. So if you go on there, there's a lot of good films.
For all our listeners, go to surfandabide.com and check it out. There's all these awesome, great videos, interviews of really interesting surfers. One of our guests, Phil Brown, was on. Like numerous others. It's incredible how much you've stockpiled of content on there.
Yeah, I was working hard. I mean, on it. You know, I really was on it, and you know, it's really just recently where I started to take what I was doing then and kind of turn it into something new. Yeah. Where, you know, with this new film that
Which we're going to get into, yeah.
So the film and, you know, those kind of things, like that stuff is where I'm going, at least with the creative stuff as it relates to surfing, you know, is, you know, really into, you know, directing the films and coming up with the concepts and, you know, organizing the shoots and all that stuff, and, you know, sitting down with the person like through the edit and, you know, working on all that stuff.